welcome everybody to another episode of The Disruptor. I am your host, Jan Almasi, and actually I am here today with another beautiful episode provided by my co-host, Mr. John Koontz.
Hey Jan, how you doing today?
Not too bad, brother. We have a lot of friends here with us today.
We do. This is going to be the Disruptor is going to disrupt the podcast a bit today, and we are going to, instead of having our normal, Jan and I interviewing somebody, we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's also going to be a bit of an experiment.
I know, and I'm super excited to just explore this topic. You know, when you first brought this up, the ability to be able to talk a little bit about the benefits. For me personally, and for those listeners that have been with us for a while, coming from a military background and then also working in nursing and dealing with a lot of psychology and being inside of that space for a long time, I've really come to understand and really grasp the benefits of animal-based therapies, right? And today we're going to be exploring a lot to do with animal-based therapies, especially when it comes to horses. So, John, I would like to just allow you to introduce, a portion of our moderators, and then we'll allow the entire panel to kind of give their names.
Awesome. So before I do that, I just want to let everybody know that's listening that our show today is sponsored by the Horses and Humans Research Foundation. And as you can read on the screen, or if you can listen, I'll read. If you're listening, the mission is through sustained investment in rigorous research. Horses and Human Research Foundation serves a catalyst to advance global knowledge of horse-human interaction and the impact on health and wellness. In addition, the Horses and Human Research Foundation is sponsoring a conference coming up later this month. Coming up in October. It's called Connect, Learn, and Inspire, and it's a conference about research. So we'll flash up later in the show notes some of the ways that you can register and participate, or even just donate. So in the short term, our goal today is to get right into our panel discussion, and we'll go from there. So give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay. So I'm going to introduce, I guess before that, just think of this, those of you that are listening or those of you who are watching later, once we release the video. Think of this, if we were all in person, we would be in a room and we'd have a couple of panelists up on stage and a couple of moderators. And we're going to give the show over to the moderators in a second, and they're going to work with the panelists and go back and forth. You may hear a interjection or two by Jan and myself, but for the most part, we're going to be quiet and behind the scenes. So with no further ado, let me introduce our two moderators. Our first is Pebbles. She's executive director of the Horses and Humans Research Foundation. She has been there for about a year, I think. Relatively new as in that role, but has had numerous roles in the past, including participating on the education committee. She has a master's degree from NC State and a BA from Columbia College. She has served as an associate professor and a chair of sports studies department at St. Andrews University, where she has taught students in the field of therapeutic horsemanship. She's also an adjunct professor and consultant for other higher educational institutions that focus on equine assisted studies. And then our other moderator today is Tara. Tara is the CEO and founder of the Equine Immersion Project. She has a litany of professional degrees and accolades, which we will include in the show notes. But net, she is a licensed professional counselor and a certified clinical trauma professional. She graduated from Boston College with a concentration in forensic pathology and veterans behavioral health. So two very impressive people, and then even more impressive will be our panelists, which I will turn over to our moderators to introduce. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pebbles Turbyville, and I'm super excited that we're here today to talk about Horses and Humans Research Foundation. And as John read our mission, we are basically about promoting and funding research to investigate horse and human interaction. And we have had a call for grants this year for $50,000 to study trauma and how horses help individuals through trauma. And I am no psychologist, not a therapist, but I have a great group here today to be able to help explain how horses can really help people in those situations. One of our first guests is Martha McNeil. She's the program director. Is that right, Martha? Program director? Basically, she does it all. Honestly, I follow her on Facebook, and she's everywhere doing everything for Dream Power Horsemanship in Kilroy, California. And then we also have Debbie Fisher, who is the founder of Hope for Horses Horsemanship Center in Yelm, Washington. She also has a consulting business for people who want to start a veterans program using horses. And Tara, you're the one who is really have a connection with these two as far as being able to speak the language about how horses help veterans. So I'm going to pass the ball to you.
Well, hey, thanks, Pebbles and John and Jan. This is super exciting to be here. Tough topic, certainly, and HHRF really decided to have this year be the year of trauma. Not only for veterans and current events is this a timely thing, but collectively, I would say that we've all experienced some trauma this year, whether it's with our teenagers, adult parents, whatever we've all been going through with work. Very, very difficult year. So I think this is a real appropriate conversation and topic, and kind of a new twist on how another alternative complementary modality could really support healing. So, we often hear go to therapy, but as I've worked in hospitals or in my private practice, no one has ever taken a selfie with me sitting on my couch after a session. People have typically, though, when they come out to the farm and spend a day with the horse, they're taking pictures with the horse. It works. So let's take a deep dive into why and what that even means, and why research is so important, supporting that, so that we can really move the needle forward and not just say, music therapy works, art therapy works, yoga works. We really want to show how equine therapy works. So we've got two great people. You don't need to hear from me much, but Martha and Debbie, we'd love to hear from you a little bit about your stories. Debbie, you have an incredible story about why you do this work. If maybe you could just kind of share with the listeners a little bit about that. And, I think it really gives credence and authenticity to how important this is.
Thank you, Tara. It is really important, having the right heart reason why to help veterans. A little bit of background information about me is that I am actually a Gold Star military widow. My late husband, Colonel Fisher, served 28 years in the military. I have two children that also served in the military. My daughter is an Air Force pilot, and my son, a Marine, served in Iraq and Afghanistan. My late husband was killed while on active duty in 2006. And after being married for 30 years, it was very devastating to me. And one of the things that I did personally for myself, we actually had his commander go ahead and work with the family since we lost Randy for 30 days. And one of the things that I did every single day for that 30 days was to take his commander. I says, the only thing I can do right now is I need to be with my horse. And I said, just because that's just something that brought me back to being able to feel. In 2009, one of my late husband's fellow workers there in the military who had post-traumatic stress told me about a program called NARA, which was North American Riding for Handicap at that time, their national conference down in Texas. And I went down to Texas, and I listened to a panel of veterans tell me how horses had literally kept them from committing suicide and given their lives back. I just in awe. I was tears coming down my eyes. I got to talk to the men afterwards, and they told me in no uncertain terms to go back to Washington State and start a program for veterans. And it was pretty amazing how God just opened up the doors. I already had 7 horses of my own at that point in time. One thing that was a little bit funny is my late husband, one of his horses was actually a trained police horse and also a jousting horse for the Seattle Knights. And I sold that horse 3 times. And that horse, I would tell the new owner, I said, if it doesn't work out, you just let me know and I'll buy him back. Well, I bought back the horse 3 times. So I knew God had something in mind for Root Beer and I, and it definitely was equine therapy with veterans.
Thanks so much, Debbie. You know, it is really interesting on what brought you here was trauma of your own, and how we label it post-traumatic stress disorder. However, in the industry, we're really dropping the D. I loved how you called it post-traumatic stress. And even on that, because it's a natural, normal, healthy reaction to a terrible incident. Even more, I think what we're learning in equine therapy is that it's really post-traumatic growth. And that's what we're seeing with the horses is that it's not a stress disorder. And how do you learn and live a quality life with growth? So maybe Martha, you know, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, if I pitch it on over to you, what are you seeing and experiencing out there in California?
Well, can I first tell how I got into the field? Just because I want
please.
to. So my brother was actually a colonel in the Air Force, and he was a career officer also. And my dad was a lieutenant in the Air Force, and so I got interested in working with veterans because of their commitment to their people that they worked with. And so I talked with my brother at great length about the responsibility he felt for his airmen. And that kind of got me more interested in working with the veterans in our community. So we started in 2009, we started working with OEF, OYF veterans who were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And now we've been working with veterans, I guess, for 11 years. And we work with veterans of all eras, all ages, all branches, men and women. And so we have 3 weekly support groups for veterans, which are equine assisted support groups. And so we have 2 for mixed gender groups, and then 1 specifically for female veterans. And these groups meet weekly and they come to the ranch. And one of the things that we've heard from many people is that it's hard to get veterans who are at home out of their houses to come to therapy, that it's difficult. And so one of the things that we have found with the horses is that it's motivational, that one of the good qualities about horses is they motivate people to come. Like they like the horses. We meet at a ranch, we meet outdoors at a ranch. We don't have any buildings. We meet outdoors in the sun or the shade or rain or whatever. And the vets tell us they love being outdoors. So they love being with the animals and they love being outdoors in an open environment. Many of them tell us it's peaceful here. Like this is the only place that I can relax. I'm not looking on rooftops. I'm not looking for an ambush. I can relax out here. It's calm. It's peaceful. We got birds. We got owls. We got quail. We got horses snorting and kicking and doing their horse things. And it's just a very relaxing pastoral environment. And that encourages vets to come. And the other thing I would just add is that we want our farm or our ranch to be a resource for them. It's a community for them. So veterans are invited to come anytime when they need to stop by. And oftentimes they will stop by to see their horse. They're on their way to the VA. They're on their way to a difficult appointment or whatever, or they're coming home from a difficult appointment and they'll just pop by to see their horse, hang out with their horse for a little bit, have a little communion time, and then kind of regroup and then go on their day. So what we're trying to do is to do long-term work with veterans, just become a part of their long-term support network. And we've had vets get married, vets have kids, they move cross country, we stay in touch with them. So it's just, we want to become a part of their family, a part of their support network. And our horses are really the motivation that makes them come back. They're not coming back for us necessarily. They're coming back for the horses.
Martha, that's such a good point. So a lot of people after being separated from the military say they missed that community, right? And have a really hard time reconnecting. So what we see in trauma specifically, or even in any type of transition in life, is sometimes you disconnect from yourself, from others, from your community, from your family, from a higher purpose and meaning. So you're right that, people ask all the time, why horses? Why not a llama farm or a snake farm or, what is it? And you're right that it might be difficult to tell your story or get in touch with your story, but you're able to connect to a horse first, which gets you grounded in that time and space, and then a place, and then a farm family, and then your own community. So, Jan, when you returned, and you've served in the Air Force National Guard, did you miss that kind of that camaraderie and community? Was that something you experienced?
Oh, most definitely. So when I got out of the Air National Guard, it was an interesting decision because I turned down captain's bars to leave. I felt in my gut that, actually the whole reason why we're sitting here today was a calling of mine that I was experiencing that was not allowing me to sign that promotion paperwork with good conscience, because I felt like I was being pulled to start a business. Right. And so I was like, okay, cool. I have a purpose when I leave the military. So I'm not going to be like those, the veterans that leave and, struggle and can't find purpose and everything else. And was I wrong? Like leaving and taking that uniform off, I think regardless of whether you were a guard, whether you have never been deployed, whether you've been deployed 5 times, um, comes with a sense of identity loss and a loss of higher purpose. Right. And then dealing with that, actually a lot of the work that I saw at a place called Whispering Grace locally here in Canton, Ohio, where I'm located, got me really interested in a lot of the equine therapies, because they were saying that veterans were coming in and the conversations that they were afraid to have with the therapist, or that they didn't want to have with anybody else, they were having with the horses. And the horses would always listen. And I talked to a couple of the veterans that were at the location when I was working with Whispering Grace. And I haven't personally experienced the equine therapy. I grew up on a farm, so I've been around horses a lot. So I understand the connection. But I remember talking to one veteran specifically that said um, that the horse listened to him more than anybody ever has in his entire life. And then he keeps coming back over and over again, helps clean out the stalls, helps, do everything, just to feel that intimate connection, and then has the ability to ground himself and have conversations with other people. But I think that transition out of the military, no matter what type of branch, we seem to be very Air Force heavy in here. Fly high, aim high, fight, win, right? But no matter what, regardless of branch, regardless of deployment capability, you take that uniform off, and there is going to be a transition period. And I think that this is a beautiful way to be able to assist in that transition.
Yeah, it's so funny. You're right. All of us experience, the veterans come, they connect with the horse, and then they want to work, right? They want to do things
Hmm.
like cleaning stalls, fixing fences, because they are so motivated and mission oriented. Like Martha said, getting outdoors. When they're cleaning stalls, I thought, God, how can I kind of pitch this as a good thing? Oh, it's aromatherapy. Yeah, that's it. This is aromatherapy. Come on into the barn. Bed neck CrossFit. Let's do this. But we really want to get back to like the science of it. Why does it work? Why is HHRF, Horses and Humans Research Foundation, so invested in rigorous research to say, what is happening? It's great for us to talk about great stories of so-and-so saved their life because of Buddy the horse. But we need to prove the efficacy to stand strong as this modality. So if I can pitch it over a little bit to some of the research, Debbie, you guys did an incredible study with Baylor.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
mind talking a little bit about what that research was and what those outcomes were?
Right. Well, this is something that is very important. Horses Humans Research Foundation is the foundation that went ahead and funded this grant for this research project. It was the very first research project in regards to post-traumatic stress and what horses can play into that part. We're seeing an over a 50% reduction, over 50% in post-traumatic stress symptoms within 8 weeks of working with horses. And this is just even on the ground. It doesn't even have to do with the riding. The horse is the key here. And I am just so grateful for the Horses Humans Research Foundation for having that money available. It's so important that we continue. I've been doing internal research since I began 11 years ago to validate to our community, to everyone, that this is a viable program that we can use for our veterans. And the one thing that I try to encourage everybody to understand too is that it's complementary. We're not trying to get rid of traditional therapies. We are very complementary. And I have a lot of physicians and nurse case managers, when they know that they have one of our veterans in the program, and the veteran comes in for their appointment and they just don't even want to do anything at all in that appointment. And the doctor can say, well, how's your horse doing? Or, and even say the name of the horse. And then all of a sudden that veteran will just open up and start talking. So I think that we are very complementary. Same thing with family members. I have had veterans where their family members are still back at their duty station, and they've all come here to Joint Base Lewis McChord, and they've been here for years, literally 2 to 3 years. And of course, when they call up on the phone, the last thing that they want to do is, well, hey, dear, how was your doctor's appointment? Or, we have these bills to pay. But the family member can say, I saw you on Facebook working with your horse, and that was just absolutely amazing. And then the communication lines it's such a ripple effect equine therapy can have. But we just need to convince the country that this is something worthwhile to pay for, because like Martha and I both know, we do everything by fundraising to raise money. Horses are expensive, and I'm never ever going to charge a veteran because they have paid the price already. And I just think it's very, very important that this program continue always to be free for our veterans.
Debbie, such a good point about families. So you're right, the families are awesome. You know that.
Yes.
We all see
Oh,
that.
yeah.
We all hear it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so sometimes, healing can we can slip in there, and a grandfather who served in Vietnam isn't going to disappoint his 12-year-old granddaughter who wants to come out to the horse farm for a day at the farm. So it is
Yes.
kind of a sneak attack in there of
Yes.
how we can really engage.
Uh-huh.
And then healing becomes kind of a family conversation.
Mhm.
So it's healing without actually labeling it as therapy. That's so important. And Martha, I see you shaking your head, absolutely agreeing. Can you speak
Yeah.
a little bit on that, on how you kind of get people engaged and what the horse does for that?
The story that came into my head, Tara, was we had a mom who was deployed, I think 3 times to Iraq, and she had 2 little boys at home. And when she finally came home to stay, she sent us the most beautiful letter about what it had meant to her to have her children in our Horses for Warriors program while she was deployed, because they would send her photos there of their kids riding. She would have conversations when she could call home. They told her about their horse. They told about what they were doing at the barn. And she said it was the first time that it wasn't just tears and when are you going to come home, Mom? And she felt like her kids really had a support system at home, and that being deployed, that gave her this incredible peace in her heart, knowing that the community was supporting her kids, and that the community was helping to really surround her little boys with love and support while she was over there serving. And it makes me tear up thinking about it, because it was really a beautiful moment. But we took care of that family until they moved out of the area. After Mom came home, we continued to do work with Mom and the kids. We've had many families where we have, vets who come and bring their kid with them. My kid needs community service hours. Can she clean stalls while I'm here in group? Absolutely. Oh, my wife wants to come. Cool. So we've had spousal support groups through the years off and on, but we try to involve adult children, little kids, parents, siblings, everybody. We involve the whole family, and we have a lot of what we call family days at the ranch, where that's our recruiting tool, is we invite the veterans and their families to come in order to get the kids and the spouses hooked. And then they make the vet come, because the vet sometimes is a little reluctant, but if their kids or their wife wants to come, they'll come. So we use the families as a part of the motivational tool as well. And we're providing a real healing service to them, helping them. The other thing that I just want to say is that what we learned from our vets is that many times when they were coming home from combat, they had real difficulty connecting with their children and their spouses again. And they had difficulty talking with them and difficulty improving those relationships. And so by having the horse to talk about, we had one wife that told us, after he comes back from the barn, he won't shut up for 2 hours. All he wants to do is talk about his horse. And that really helped that family to improve their communication, just because dad was at the ranch and he was so excited about his horse. He came home and he wanted to talk, when ordinarily he really was pretty withdrawn and didn't want to talk in the beginning. And that horse provided a bridge for communication that then sort of spilled over into other areas of life.
Oh, Martha, that's so great to hear. And I think that's happening all over the country. You're absolutely right that, it is giving something, what we call positive and corrective emotional experiences, right? So you have this wonderful thing to be able to talk about that's exciting and normalized, instead of, gosh, yeah, I had to go for, a back appointment, or a brain injury appointment, or hearing loss. So yeah, you're absolutely right that it is something that's kind of normalized and real positive. But maybe what we should do for the listeners is kind of like rewind a little bit and actually even explain what happens, because there might kind of be, are they only cleaning stalls? They keep hearing about that. So let's back up a little bit and say, like, what a typical thing might be. There's Equine Assisted Services has many buckets. One is called groundwork. So that means you're not doing any riding or anything. And we'll let either one of you kind of talk about that. Another one is therapeutic riding, where you're actually on top of a horse doing all different types of experiences, walk, trot, turn, stop, and really finding, how to hold the reins of the horse as well as your life. There's some that might be carriage driving. So you might be on top of, sitting in the back of the carriage, kind of those old buggies that you see. You hook it up and, really learn how to connect and communicate with a horse by carriage driving. And vaulting, that's actually gymnastics on a moving horse. That's a really wild experience. You can see a picture here of somebody actually in a saddle, but no hands, just really that trust. So, Debbie and Martha, why don't I let you guys kind of talk back and forth a little bit about what actually equine assisted services even are and what you guys offer.
Well, I'll talk about our horsemanship. The only therapists that we do have at our place are the horses. And even though we keep the veterans on the ground for the first 8 weeks before they go into the riding, and a big part of the reason that we do that is that a horse, being a prey animal, is a lot like a veteran that has post-traumatic stress. And they're always at that state of hypervigilance, looking around for what the danger is. And the other thing that they do is whoever is a part of their herd, they're going to be paying attention. So in a horse's world, the more eyes and ears that are paying attention out in the pasture, the safer they're going to be, keeping that cougar from jumping on their back and eating them. And when we partner up a veteran with a horse, they'll stay with that very same horse the entire time. And the thing that's really great about this is now that person is a part of that horse's herd. And that horse is going to, whatever is going on inside the veteran, say for instance, there's quite a bit of high anxiety. The horse is going to be very, very nervous and hard to work with. It's going to be fidgety, looking around, because as far as they're concerned, that veteran is telling them there's danger around here somewhere, and I'd better be ready to run away from that danger. And so what's really great is that's immediate biofeedback for that veteran on really what's going on with them. Many of them have been at this state of hypervigilance for a long time. They think it's their new normal. and it's not normal, and that horse is going to call them on it. I just love our horses because they are the best lie detectors. These men and women come to our program, and they just look really normal to begin with, but that horse is going to tell you the truth, what's really going on inside, whether their heart is racing or their blood pressure is up. And so if that horse is very fidgety, it's hard to work with. They need to learn how to become the leader for that horse. And so by doing this on the ground to begin with is much safer. It's also been a very positive thing for my horses. Horses that do the same thing over and over and over again have a tendency to burn out very quickly. And by having them learn how to become the leader for the horse, it makes it easier to work with the horse. Plus, my horses stay in the program longer too, which is really great. The one thing, Jan, that I just really appreciate you guys is you're all adrenaline junkies at heart. And so what I'm doing is just teaching horsemanship skills. And like you saw in that last picture, these veterans were walking over that 30-foot balance beam that was 18 inches wide with no hands, of course, a long time before I ever even tried it. So I just really appreciate being able to work with these men and women and give them that new adrenaline rush that is a whole lot safer than what they were used to do.
Tara, I can tell you about our program. So we offer groundwork, which most of what we actually do is on the ground now. We also have carriage driving, and we also do have horseback riding. Right now, we don't have any veterans that are riding because of physical injuries. So we have had so many vets with back injuries, knees, ankles, just all shoulders. And so we haven't been able to do as much riding as we used to because they're just in the middle of putting their bodies back together after their service. So it's been difficult with the riding, but the carriage driving allows people to do more work with the horses than they can do mounted. So we do have vets who are doing carriage driving right now. We have a ton of groundwork happening, which I find is every bit as satisfying. When we first started, we had young vets who were just back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they were all jacked up, and all they wanted to do was get on a horse and run. And so we worked with that for a little bit, and that was okay. But now that group of vets, in our experience, is getting older, and their injuries are catching up with them. And so now they're going back to the VA for back surgery and for knee surgery. And so now they're actually happy to be on the ground working with the horse. So we can accommodate people in wheelchairs. We can accommodate, people on crutches. We can accommodate anybody to work with the horses. We have miniature horses who work with our vets if we feel like it's not safe to have a big horse around. And so we're very flexible, very accommodating, but most of our work at the moment happens on the ground. The next group happens in a carriage. And then we have a few vets who are still riding, but right now, not a whole lot. But we're flexible, and we go back and forth with the equine activities because the horse is the constant. And then what the activity looks like just depends on the needs of the individual person at this time in their life.
Can I jump in for a second, Martha? I wanted to you brought up a point, and I just want to sort of emphasize it, and that's around carriage driving, because what carriage driving does is it opens up the opportunity to just about everyone. You can be quadriplegic, a paraplegic, you can have limbs missing, you can be blind, you can whatever, and you can experience the equine excitement, if you will, behind on a carriage. I mean, the ones I've worked with, we actually fit the wheelchairs right in. We lock them in. If they have use of their arms, we let them drive the carriage with an instructor. So the point I just wanted to bring up is that the beauty is it's sort of the gamut, right? From ground to carriage to on the horse, sort of opens up an opportunity for whatever your disability might be, whether it be cognitive or physical, if you will.
The thing that I want to add on that, driving is actually a very high adrenaline rush discipline in the horse world that can be very, very dangerous. So it actually is very attractive to our veterans. We have 6 driving horses in our program, and the same thing. If you've watched the Olympics this year and what they did with those horses, it really can be a good adrenaline rush for these veterans.
You're right. There is a sense of what does it feel like to feel competent and to feel confident? So competent and confident. And so, we label it as adrenaline rush, and we want to kind of program that into, how do we feel alive? How do we feel awake? And I think that's a lot of what horses do. They send that feedback of, I've got your back if you've got my back. If you walk into a field to catch me and you're not connected, I'm going to run away. It's kind of like your kids or your puppy. So you're right that there is that sense of you're so in the moment of whether you're working with the horse and leading it on the ground, or you are in a carriage and trotting around pretty fast. You're always in the moment. And when we're doing the research, if we really bring it back to HHRF, and the research is showing specifically that self-confidence, that social engagement, that emotional regulation that we're looking for, so you can get yourself kind of that high feeling of, I'm doing something really amazing, yet I'm safe and I'm feeling alive. So maybe we could talk a little bit about, what that feels like, and how sustained it is. Because we don't want people to have this mountaintop experience for 30 minutes and then not have the impact last for 6 to 8 weeks or months. So the research that we're looking at with HHRF is really the effects on equine assisted services with PTS. Could either one of you kind of speak on that? Martha, are you seeing those long-term effects of, what does it feel like for veterans in your programs or families?
Well, I would like to talk about coping skills. The horses actually really do teach the veterans new coping skills that they can take out to the rest of their life. And so it starts with that immediate biofeedback. I hear my veterans a lot of times say that, that being there at class, being in the moment really helps a lot, and it'll last maybe 1 day, 2 days, bring it out a little bit further. Like you said, we want to see these coping skills actually carry over into their rest of their life. And I really do honestly think that the horse does do that. I've had veterans tell me that they've gone ahead and gone into Walmart, and there's got to be too many people in the store. And then they just thought, okay, what did I do to calm Fred back down? And they applied those same techniques at being there in the middle of that store with all those people, and were able to get out to keep control of the situation, and everything goes very well. And so this just sort of broadens open those doors. Instead of isolating back at home, they can actually start functioning again in our communities, which is very powerful. And we've proven it.
That's the point. Absolutely. Is that, you see in the moment, maybe what an 8-week session does. And then you see the impact of, now I'm actually applying those skills. So in therapy, they're learning a lot of things, cognitive behavior therapy or prolonged exposure therapy, or all these validated, therapeutic approaches to healing. And what the horses do is they give you that visceral, back in your body kind of reminder of, I experienced this, I remember that, and now I will do this. So you're absolutely right, Debbie, that, that is just, it's fascinating, right? And it's so exciting. So you're right. Like, where do we then go with that? How do we measure it? How do we, get that qualitative number stuff? How do we get the quantitative numbers and the qualitative impact studies? And so that's kind of the exciting challenge that we're all facing in this industry, is to validate those outcomes. Do you have any numbers or anything that you could kind of, you said, 50%, 70%, what are you seeing with outcomes, like specifically, whether it's coping strategies or emotional regulation? Do you have any numbers you could throw out there for the audience?
In 2018, some of the internal things that we're actually tracking are anxiety, detachment, pain, irritation, fatigue, their energy level, and also insomnia. And in 2018, for anxiety, we are seeing a 42% decrease. In detachment, it was a 39% decrease. In their net pain, it was only 18. But think about it, they're actually doing physical therapy in a really cool setting. And so I see men and women move from wheelchairs to walkers to using canes very, very quickly, probably a lot faster than traditional therapies, because of course, when you're grooming a horse and using that horse for that stability instead of those other items. Irritability went down 36%. The fatigue actually went down 21%. Their energy actually went up 21%. And insomnia was 0.06. And then that was for 2018, 2019. The scores even got better with the anxiety reduced by 51%. Their detachment was 46%. And so on. And so the thing that I like to tell on the consulting side, when I have people that want to go ahead and start programs with veterans in equine therapy, is that they really need to be doing internal research. There's multiple reasons why to do it. One might be for the fundraising part, to validate why people in the community need to support your program because of the results that you're getting right there at your center. And then also, it's just really important for everyone to see in regards to that it doesn't matter, it's the horse is the key here. Martha can be doing her program maybe a little bit differently than I do, but we're all getting the same results. And the Baylor Research Project showed that. We went ahead and we had 4 centers using my published curriculum. So we're all using the same curriculum and in different parts of the country, and we all got the same result. The recent Missouri research project, same thing. They just had a writing program going. They didn't even do the groundwork. But here again, the same thing. It was the horse that is the commonality that we're seeing the same results on and helping these men and women, which is just simply amazing. And then to the fact that I have so many of the men and women that actually start decreasing the medications that they're taking because they don't need them anymore, which is just simply wonderful.
So we will put a link to that Baylor research study in our show notes. And I believe that was the one that was funded by HHRF, amongst others.
I'll get that one out later.
Yeah, Debbie's really good about
Tara,
highlighting the 3 different studies that HHRF has funded on veterans. So I really appreciate that little shout out for HHRF.
And Tara, can I point out why we need more of this kind of research? So it's really difficult to do research on anything involving psychotherapy, because especially when people are getting treatments in multiple places. So if you're getting treatment at the barn and at the VA and other places, it's very difficult to tease that all out. So one of the reasons that we need HHRF to fund scientific research about our veterans is to get a clean study that can demonstrate what's actually happening specifically to this treatment, because it's just really difficult when to try to tease it all out, and we need funding to help scientists get it straightened out, because it's really hard to do in the field without that kind of support, and we need a lot more of it.
You know, it's really interesting. I think hopefully the audience and listeners are really tuned into the incredible impact this has. And if it's something that you're familiar with and you've been around animals, hopefully we're speaking your language. If you've never touched a horse or been around it, hopefully you're hearing that there are other resources out there. You know, HHRF and equine therapy is not only for veterans. You know, historically, veterans and military really have paved the way with, you know, whether it was shell shock or amputations or scientific breakthroughs, because it was a large, measurable community. Like you're saying, you know, here's this pool of people that we can really do research with to move medicine ahead. But HHRF has funded stuff for autism, for cerebral palsy, at-risk youth. Pebble, could you tell a little bit more about, you know, this is the year of trauma, but it's pretty incredible the far-reaching effects with autism and cerebral palsy. That's even really exciting. You know, we'll come back to that, but veterans are brothers and sisters who have lots of deep things that are going on, and maybe we talk a little bit about Equine Assisted Services there.
Well, you know, we've spent or have $655,000. That's over $500,000 we've already used in research and different grants for research in different areas. And you were hitting on a lot of them. We've done 4 in autism, 3 in cerebral palsy, 3 in veterans, 2 in youth, 1 with post-traumatic stress disorder, but it wasn't with veterans, it was non-veterans, and 1 on the innovative use of technology. So we've done a variety of research. And the thing is, it's so exciting when you're having this conversation and we're talking about how research helps veterans or helps people with trauma by utilizing the horse. It's just the questions keep coming up. Why? And why is this working? Or how can we investigate this more? Or how can we prove this more? Or why is this going this way? And really, all we need are dollars just to back up that why, because the more money we have, the more money we can do in research. It's just like Martha was saying with, why is research work? Why are veterans, we know this, but why are veterans succeeding at the farm rather than maybe in a different type of therapy? Could we compare that? Or what's the difference? Which we know that's kind of the horse, but what are the other elements that are helping them be successful? Or maybe it's not a horse, maybe it's something else. And why is it? And, that question of why, but with that why, you always have to have the dollar amount to help with that funding.
So yeah, let me jump in for a second, Pebbles, and just sort of the way I see it, in as I travel around, it's we all have this, and you guys have done a great job of giving us sort of the visible, I'll call it the visible evidence, right? The what we see and what we observe, and what I've been hearing from people I talk to is that's great, but you do have to, as you mentioned, have to raise money and pay for your services. And one way to do that is to support what all the good work you do by some science or some research. And obviously, then the way you do that is you have to find an organization that can fund that research. So it's sort of this great ecosystem, right? So we try to raise money. We then we put a call for grants out to submit the research. We fund it. The research is then published, and then it flows down to organizations such as yours, so that you can use it in your work, either to provide better services to your constituents, or just as important, use it to help raise or do your own fundraising. So I see this as a sort of an ecosystem that keeps going around and around and around.
Right. Like Debbie had mentioned, the Baylor Baylor University study by Beth Lanning, that's been cited 9 times in other research. So not only did she provide us research, she's also doing a foundation or setting a foundation for other people to do research. And that also has been read over 1,000 times, that we can track, that we've actually physically tracked. And the same thing on a different note was the effects of therapeutic riding on stress levels in the young adults with autism spectrum disorder. That was done at Slippery Rock University by Dr. McKinning. Basically, that's been read 18,000 times. Like, as a reference, people have read it 18,000 times. So we are not only providing that money for research, but we're also providing it that's helping others do research. So it's a huge stepping stone or stepping blocks.
I think of it as a rippling effect, which is really great here with the research part, but also with our veterans. If we reach out and help our veterans, we have a rippling effect that we can have not only with the families, but with the community, with the entire nation, and even the world. And a lot of times people don't realize, how profound effect we can have if we do help our veterans. And I just, being a military wife, and traveling all over the world in the 28 years that Randy served, I know what it's like to live in other parts of the world. And we owe these veterans everything for this wonderful place that we have to live here.
That's such a good point. All over the world, horses are all over the world, right? So
Yeah.
people might not have access to, high level universities or medical centers. However, horses have been our partners for thousands of years. They helped build our cities. They carried us into war. They've, helped plow our fields. So we've had this human horse interaction or a bond. And now to be able to partner in another way and really explore why, it just wasn't that long ago that they helped us go, into the store to down the street before cars. So Jan, if we kind of, bring it back to, you said you grew up on a farm and, your understanding of this, kind of as both a veteran and as an ICU nurse, and during a pandemic, what do you think your listeners need to hear from us that kind of gets them the buy-in or helps them really understand what this could be?
So if I was thinking, talking to more the scientific piece, or at least maybe a mixture of the scientific piece and maybe some anthropological conversation, is like you were just saying, horses have been our partners for thousands of years. You don't interact with the same animal or the same type of plant or the same human. You don't interact with something over thousands of years and not have your neurology rewire itself in a way that forms a bond with that thing. That we talk all the time about deep brainstem functions and parts of our nervous system that we start to kind of lose consciousness of, because our consciousness is really only a small portion of what our brain is actually processing on a daily basis. And if you start to think about what that subconscious does when you interact with an animal, especially an animal that has been a part of the human race's, journey on this earth for such a long period of time, that intimate connection is an amazing thing. And growing up on a farm, you know, there was something to be said about taking care of that animal. Feeling that responsibility to something other than yourself gives you purpose. And that's a beautiful thing, because it meaning is so hard to find. When you get disrupted, no pun intended for the pod, when you get disrupted in life and you're thrown off track, and whether it's as simple of a situation as mine, which was just taking off the uniform at the beginning of the pandemic, or somebody that has been on multiple extremely difficult deployments and has seen, friends pass away and has seen a lot of, traumatic stuff come back. You're still, for that person, regardless of what scale they experience that identity loss, they still experience the identity loss. And so for that person, that individualized experience is still a feeling of lack of meaning. And so for all of my nurses out there that are dealing with PT, like the negative situations that have happened because of COVID, with all of the pressure that has come from working at the hospitals, with all of the I could spend an hour just talking about what it was like working in the ICUs during COVID. It's the closest thing that I've seen to kind of military-esque exposure, like the volume of traumatic experiences that people are being exposed to in the hospital systems is, if you're listening to this and you are a healthcare professional, understand that just because it is our calling or our vocation to care for others does not mean that it is not okay for you to care for yourself. It's something that I've battled for a long time. It's something that, between being in the military and nursing, I have a servant's heart. I think that my choices in career path kind of show that. And a lot of times we have difficulty admitting, or not even admitting, we have difficulty acknowledging that we have an empty gas tank, because we believe that there's so many other people that are relying on us to have a full gas tank that, we're not willing to have that conversation with ourselves. So maybe you don't need to have that conversation with yourself. You don't need to have that conversation with another person. Maybe you just need to have that conversation with a horse. Yeah.
Well, And Jan, that's a great point, because what I've learned or noticed or observed over the years was when you are working with a very, very large animal, and all of a sudden you have a responsibility to take care of it, even if it's just to groom it or to saddle it or bridle it or take it out to to the pasture or to the paddock or to feed it or whatever. It's very simple things. You all of a sudden stop focusing on what's important to you, but you start focusing on what's important to the animal. And it could be the same with dogs and I'm sure other animals, but I think the mere size of the horse also has a great impact. And I think you guys alluded to a lot of that and so much on why we spend time on groundwork first. I will tell you, I was not a very good rider, but I was really good at cleaning out stalls and curry combing horses. And, I could win the saddle derbies and things like that. But uh, so it's just, I think you're onto a good point. It's this we've and one of the reasons I wanted all you folks on the Disruptor podcast was because we have had a year of disruption, not only in physical and mental disruption through the pandemic, but certainly in my world, in the technology world, we're seeing extreme uh, digital disruption and experience disruption. And so I think I wanted to spend some time just grounding us back onto how to cope with some of that and how to help the world, if you will, at the end of the day.
Jan, I just wanted to address what you were talking about with first responders. I know that there's actually been some research being implemented already about first responders and how Equine Assisted Services have been helping first responders, and not only just the research, but I think that it's a great program that has started out of disruption, in the sense that firefighters, EMTs, nurses, doctors, all that have been on the front lines of this COVID, have had an opportunity to, at some facilities, because a lot of our equine assisted services centers actually had to close down due to COVID. Some of them even went out of business just because they didn't have other funding resources. Some had to look at alternative revenue streams, but one, they decided, you know what, we really need to offer this service to our frontline responders, which are, the medical service. So from that, it kind of it offered a service, but then some international programs started doing some research with it about how it actually helped those responders with their stress and trauma themselves.
Yeah,
Pebbles, I wanted
that's so cool. That's awesome.
Pebbles, I wanted to share with you. I actually have got a first responders group starting over in Spokane, Washington. First responders have always been on my heart ever since, even when I first started this 11 years ago. But I've stayed so busy with veterans that I didn't have time for that. But on the consulting side, not only, do we have this first responders center starting over in Spokane, but we've also got another program starting over in the Philippines for the active duty Army over there. I've also got something going on over in Jordan with the refugee children from Syria. Horses are absolutely amazing at helping us heal. I can't say enough about that. So, yes.
Jan, yeah, Debbie, it's incredible. You're right. So, Jan, what you were talking about is what is even trauma? And I think a lot of people might say to themselves, I didn't have some horrific incident or this, one thing, that really did it. And what we're really seeing is sustained cumulative trauma. Even if it's taking care of a 6-month-old, a 4-year-old, and a 10-year-old who you're trying to teach from home while maintain a job, while do any of that, what does all of a sudden, this continuum of trauma look like? So you're right, absolutely. Sometimes we think of trauma as just a one-time, an IED blew up my Humvee. Or is it being separated from my family because I'm doing, long shifts at the hospital? Or is it, I can't relate because, I've had to have 15 really difficult calls as a firefighter, or a teacher who, is scared, or whatever it might be. And, for some people, a splinter can really ruin their day. And other people, an amputation is, okay, I'll figure it out. Acknowledge where you are, really just whatever you're experiencing is valid and real. And Jan, you have such a good point. Whoever you are and whatever you're experiencing, take that time to do that self inventory. Am I okay? Because I've got to make sure everybody else is okay. So I think that's kind of what our work does, with getting yourself grounded enough, and a horse keeps you real. You can then start to heal yourself, which then has that ripple effect. Martha, as a licensed marriage family therapist, are you seeing that ripple effect with families and communities out by you? So when we're talking about, the concept of trauma and the concept of kind of sustained stress, horses there's been research that showed that cortisol levels decreased. So you measure the cortisol level of the human by swabbing inside their mouth, and you measure actually the cortisol level of the horse, and both are matching as decreasing. We talk about heart rate variability. When we're really anxious and upset, our hearts, really are dealing with a lot of that stress. And what we've done is we've done research where, a heart monitor's on the human and on the horse, and you start to mirror, kind of like when you're hanging out with a friend and you're both real chill and relaxed. You start to kind of do the same, like cross your legs at the same time or scratch your head at the same time. And you're like, what was that? That's what horses do, is you start to slow your respirations, because they breathe slower respirations per minute with us. Their heart rate's slower. Their temperature is warmer. So, that stress response of feeling colder and your blood not flowing as well. So that's what we're talking about with the biofeedback. And that can be for anyone, whether it's children at risk, autism, cerebral palsy, all of those benefits. Jan, I think you have a really, really good point there of what is that horse connection. And you said, a little bit about anyone who is struggling right now, who do they reach out to? We'd love to be a clearinghouse for that, Horses and Humans Research Foundation, and a place for you to explore those options. What do you think your listeners would need to hear of where do we even go to find out more about this?
For you guys, are you asking like resources as far as like my connections with Whispering and Grace and then talking to you guys, or?
Yeah, do you think your listeners would want to know, a few of the large organizations that really do kind of work with HHRF, or maybe Pebbles, are you the one to answer that? Partners that we do on the Animal Connection.
Oh yeah, my listeners would 110% benefit from that, because when it comes to, the listener demographic, it's a lot of first responders and medical staff and military when it comes to the listenership, just by the nature of my jobs and over the course of building the show. So for everybody listening, pay attention to what's about to be said, because it's going to be some cool resources for you guys.
Oh no, the pressure's on.
Dun dun dun.
I know. Well, one of the things is with HHRF, I mean, we are a resource so that for really research, but we also promote those centers who have been accredited by PATH, which is the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International. But we also support other centers that do other types of programs that might be a gala or E3A. I'm trying to think of other ones, Tara, that you might know of.
Yeah, so those are acronyms, right? Military gets, that we're always doing acronyms. So again, PATH, that's the Professional Association for Therapeutic Horsemanship. And they have all types of certified therapeutic riding, carriage driving. I'm an equine specialist in mental health learning. I know Martha is a certified riding instructor. Another one is EGALA that Pebbles just mentioned. That stands for EAGALA, Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. Again, that's Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. That one is on the ground with a therapist, and they do really good work on helping people in groups heal. Some other organizations, E3A, that's a really fun one. That's, oh gosh, that's a mouthful for me. Equine Educational Experiential. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah, you got it right.
There you go. So they do really neat, like corporate team building. So maybe you guys had, someone maybe lost their life in COVID, or a event that you want to really empower your employees after, being home and now coming back together. E3A is a great organization to get through some of that. So, Debbie and Martha are also really involved in a lot of other organizations, but we want to just throw out a few of those for you.
One big one that I do want to point out, because sometimes we kind of think, just in our own little United States or North America, but really what we're talking about is international. And HETI, HETI, which is the Federation of Horses in Education and Therapy International. They also support research. They just had a virtual, what was actually a hybrid Congress in Seoul, Korea. And that's where I actually learned, Jan, about the research that was being done on first responders in Equine Assisted Services. I was surprised at how many centers were actually doing research in that area. But HETI is a great group or organization that is also helping us with research, and it's international. So
Great. Hey, let me just jump in for a second, just to let we will put all of these links in the show notes. One of the things Jan and I do as part of the Disruptor podcast is we try to democratize this information, so it will be sent out to all of the participants, to Debbie and Tara and Martha and Pebbles, and be utilized as they see fit, whether it be on their YouTube channel or on their Facebook page or things like that. So we will have links to all of that and a little more detail on each of the four, two moderators and the two panelists. So just don't those of you that are trying to write all this down, don't worry about it. We'll get you covered.
What you're hearing today is what's so exciting about all of this is that we are coming from a place that healing is a collaboration, not a competition. All of us have different ways of healing or doing things. And as long as we're all collaborating and supporting each other, getting the information out to each other, that's what this is about. And that's what the disruptor seems to be about, is, come up with these really cool ideas. What's going on for you? Make it real, pay it on. If horses aren't for you, it might be for somebody that your neighbor or something. So I think the disruptor is such a cool experiment and experience, for your listeners to kind of access these really amazing opportunities to learn. And we're just having fun talking about, trauma. What's wrong with us?
Well, one of the reasons we started this podcast was Jan and I got talking about just the whole world of, and again, from a technology background, the sort of this technical or digital disruption, and it's really sort of moved into I'll call it an experience disruption. And sort of our tagline is, are you Blockbuster or are you Netflix? Are you the taxi cab industry or are you Uber or Lyft? Either way, you are being disrupted, and then you throw on top of it a global pandemic, and every human being on this planet has gone through some sort of disruption over the last 18 months or more. And so what we try to do is give people insights on how to deal with disruption, how to either become a disruptor by offering new and unique approaches, sort of why we wanted to have you guys on this show. Or if you are being disrupted, how do you, from a business standpoint, how do you survive? How do you not go out of business? Or from a human perspective, how do you just cope with any sort of disruption that you might have, whether it be a trauma disruption or a cognitive disruption, or just you're trying to deal with your business. It's you're the taxi cab driver and Uber's coming in and cleaning your clock. So that's sort of the whole goal of this show and sort of why we put it together.
Yeah, when you got inspired by or even accepted maybe kind of the invitation or the pressure to let us all come on here, and do a new thing where, here's a bunch of ladies talking about horses. I think it was really brave of you. You had no idea what we would really present with. So thank you so much for taking the risk.
Yeah.
Um, we really appreciate it. And, is there something that you could think that maybe your audience might want to ask Debbie or ask Pebbles or me, or Martha? Anything that you think would be really curious or quirky that maybe we're not addressing?
Honestly, I think the majority of the points that my audience would be super interested in, we've been really, really good about hitting. The recaps that I think are really the coolest are just the pretty much universal applicability of it when it comes to any type of emotional stress, chronic stress, or PTS. Also, I think it's really beneficial for my audience to know that the D is dropping off of PTS. I thought that was super interesting. Even being inside of still working with child and behavioral adolescent, I wasn't aware that the D was dropping off of that diagnosis, or at least that's where the trend is kind of pushing. And I wholeheartedly understand and agree with where that's going. you know for people to understand, if they take nothing away from this episode at all, that post-traumatic stress is a normal response to extremely traumatic events, or chronically, and I won't even say extremely traumatic events, just, like you said earlier, Tara, sometimes chronically low stress events over a longer period of time, or a disruption in the daily life cycle, trying to manage 3 kids at home while having a job and everything else like that. Don't, if you're listening to this, don't look at it as, oh, everybody else is dealing with it, so my feelings must be invalidated because there's no way nobody else is feeling this. Right? You have those types of situations, validate yourself to yourself. And sometimes an animal is a really, really good way to bring that all together. So I think is a beautiful conversation about the transparency and the vulnerability that comes with understanding that post-traumatic stress is a normal human response to either like acute extremes amounts of stress or chronic low amounts of stress, that your feelings are validated, and that there are a community of people that are out there not only advocating for you, but also attempting to prove the efficacy of why they're advocating for you. And I think that's extremely powerful for the scientific community to hear and understand.
You're so right. As a trauma counselor myself, I can go 8, 10 hours, with incidents that are current affairs right now, and just hearing and holding space for a lot of really hard things. And I have to check myself all the time and say, gosh, how can I keep giving? And whether that's preparing, meals for your elderly parent that's at home, or whatever you are doing to hold that space for yourself and check that, what is it? And I will just sometimes have 15 minutes between sessions and walk out to a horse and just be. And so, not just saying, gosh, this is really great for veterans or really great for, the law enforcement or firefighters that I work with, but for myself. So I'm already drinking the Kool-Aid, and hopefully your audience is able to kind of step back and say, what am I doing? Am I scheduling 15 minutes, whatever it might be, to go sit out in the grass, to, have a glass of water, take a walk around, whatever I might need to do, check in with a friend or find something good that is going on. There's a lot of good in the world.
Yeah. Just be. I think that's a very important phrase that you just mentioned there. Just be. Ground yourself, be in your body, just be. Like, just to drive that home.
Not human doings. And we are just always doing. So
Amen.
For a little while. Martha, I know you had some kind of technical issues, but we really want to give you a chance to go on back to, give a little voice to what you've heard today, and how that being on the farm really works.
Yeah, I apologize. I am on a farm and my internet connection is like it, so I apologize for that. But I just wanted to provider, if you're a healthcare provider, there's a place for you at a program near you. And the horses love to help. They really do. They love people. They love to help. And we would just welcome you to come and explore a program in your area, because all of us, who, speaking for the field now, would welcome you to come and check out a program in your area for veterans, or for anybody who's struggling right now. Just connect with somebody local and see how the horses can help.
I know we focused a lot about veterans, but Martha, you've done a lot of other work with people with trauma or different populations. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we've been working for 20 years now with children in foster care and children who are in out-of-home placements and have experienced a lot of trauma. And we work with a lot of young people involved in the juvenile justice system, gang-affiliated kids. And so all of those children and youth have experienced a tremendous amount of trauma. And we've been working with them at the barn with the horses for 20 years. And it's a marvelous thing for young people. And it's really good for people who challenge authority, like our gang affiliated kids. And so the horse really helps them pay attention to the therapist and learn about authority a little bit when you put them next to a 1,000-pound animal. So if you're a therapist, having the horse on your side as part of your team is great. And it really helps those kids realize that they don't run the world, because the horse is bigger than they are. So yeah, we've done a ton of work with kids and youth with all kinds of trauma, and it's been extremely effective. And I'm grateful to have the horse as a part of my therapy team.
Debbie, do you have any stories that you could share a little bit about, just kind of what actually is happening, and something that really touched your heart, or why you think that the funding for this research is so important?
Oh, I have so many stories, but I do have a couple I'd love to share with you. I had one an airman. He was actually a loadmaster in the Air Force that came to our program, and he was a career military man and totally broken. And when he first came through the door, he could hardly even look me in the eye. It was just really profoundly sad at the state that he was in, this very, very hollow shell of a man. And he started working with a horse by the name of Abby, and he didn't want his photo taken, nothing. He just, leave me alone, and went to the horse and progressed. And as time progressed, he just absolutely blossomed. And not only did he learn his horsemanship skills and actually even learn how to ride other horses, but he actually competed in extreme mountain trail. And that was the one where we saw the picture of him up there on the balance beam, riding that horse with no hands, and the partnership that he developed. And it's just absolutely amazing. These men and women, they're worth saving. I'm just so proud to have the honor of being able to serve with these men and women and give them their lives back again. And so Richard is, like Martha had mentioned, we stay in contact with these men and women as the years go by, and they love to come back to the farm for vacations even. And Richard was actually here this last summer. He now lives in Arizona. And so it was just so nice to see him again. And these horses really do remember their veterans. And that's one thing that I think that really surprised me, is how our horses have lots and lots of veterans, and how they actually even remember them. Another one was Kathleen Still. Jan, you had mentioned in regards to, I have a huge percentage of my veterans that come through my program that are either medics or physicians or that type of thing. It's probably over 50%. And Buddy, this is a Missouri Foxtrotter here that you see in the picture. And Kathleen was a major in the Army, and she was a nurse, an operating nurse, and she had just seen way, way too much. And it just, for her, she'd come out to the farm and she'd see Buddy, and it really was helping her. That immediate biofeedback on where she was at really made a difference in her life. And it would, last for, the day, and then it would last for a couple days, and then she would notice that she'd have a drop off, but then she would look forward to coming out and seeing Buddy. Her granddaughter was diagnosed with cancer, and she actually passed away. And Kathleen, one day, she says, I just can't do it anymore, and actually had a revolver in her mouth and was going to pull the trigger. And then all of a sudden, it just was like a picture in her head was Buddy, and she just knew that Buddy needed her. These horses do, they depend upon us so much. I think when military men and women lose their purpose in life, these horses give them their purpose back. And even if it's not something that they're going to stay with a long time, whatever that heart's desire is, that horse actually helps them feel that what that heart's desire is again, so that they can go ahead and pursue it. And so, Kathleen, I have had so many veterans tell me that their horses have kept them from committing suicide. It's just, it's very humbling, and you really realize how important this work is for our men and women. So Buddy played a very, very important part.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those stories. You're absolutely right. You know, that's tapping into a whole nother part of what people are suffering with. And if we stop pathologizing, right, and putting it into the medical industry of, is it social, is it emotional, is it physical? Really, sometimes we're talking about spiritual injury, right? That loss of just meaning and purpose, and what are my values, and what is happening in the world? Is the world a safe and good place? So clinically, we call that moral injury. But to get away from that, what that really even means is can I trust? Am I worthy of love? You know, can I give love? And so something that may be so hard to do with another human because maybe you've been betrayed, or you know, have lost that connection to, is the world safe and good? Are people worthy of that trust? You know, horses can really give you that spiritual connection again. So I think sometimes what we talk around, because research, it's really, really hard to prove that type of thing. However, now really the industry is partnering with pastoral care. You know, many hospitals, I work with Mass General Hospital all the time, and, you know, they have as part of their program pastoral care that do rounds with the doctors. So, you know, is spiritual healing, is prayer, is it, whatever you believe in, are you nourishing, you know, that sense of you know, what keeps you going? And it could be as simple as, Buddy the horse needs me. And so I think that is some of the life-saving stuff that we see, really difficult to measure. And that's why HHRF is looking at it beyond even just rigorous quantitative research of, you know, 21% of this, or, you know, is this a significant impact of, do you feel better? And the applied sciences and the, you know, single case design, those have legitimate, you know, modalities to be able to offer in the research community. So
Tara, we talk a lot about moral injury in our program because we see moral injury as the most distressing thing that most veterans deal with. And one of the things that we've learned in the research about moral injury is that one of the ways that helps veterans and others overcome that is volunteering. And volunteering in the community gives you a sense of purpose. And so volunteering at the farm is a part of our treatment program for our veterans. And I could just give you an example of that. We had a young man who had come back from Iraq, and he was the most withdrawn, closed down veteran I'd ever met. He would not talk about anything. And I didn't know his story. I didn't know anything about him, but we had a group of kids coming out to the farm, and we invited the veterans to come out for this work project and help these kids. And so this guy said he wanted to come. I said, great. So that night, I started getting messages on the farm answering machine. And about once an hour through the entire night, this young man kept calling and saying, I'm going to be late, but I'll be there in the morning. And then an hour later, there's a message, I'm going to be late, but I'll be there in the morning. And then like every hour through the night, this veteran was saying, I'm going to be late, but I'll be there in the morning. And I knew that he was having a super hard night. I knew that he was probably suicidal, but he showed up at the ranch in the morning late, and he looked terrible. He looked like death warmed over. And I asked him, I said, do you want to talk? He goes, no. I go, all right, well then go out there and help these kids paint a fence. So they did. We never talked about it. But about a year later, I got an email from him, a book where he explained what was going on that night. And he said, you know, I had a gun there. I was drinking. I couldn't get the pictures out of my head, but I knew if I could hold on through the night, I would be at the ranch in the morning. And he said, that's what got me through the night. And that young man now has graduated college. He has a great career, but it was going to the farm to volunteer. He said, I told you I'd be there, and I was going to be there because I told you I'd be there. So that's just an example of how volunteering can help veterans have a purpose and just get through the night, get to the morning, and then everything gets better after that.
That's an incredible impact. And those are the real stories. You are absolutely right. Hopefully hearing these stories kind of after hearing the research and this leaves you with that calling, maybe to get involved with us. Look up HRF, look up Horses and Humans Research Foundation, send people our way, look up Debbie, look up Martha, look up my program, Equine Immersion Project, whatever we can do in all parts of the country, Washington, California, Ohio, we're all over. And we want to be here to serve those who have served and to help you, get the word out. So John, I'll kick it on back to you and Jan, and thank you so much for allowing this space for us to be able to, spread the word.
So that's great. Yeah, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I want to really put a shout out and a thank you for our sponsor, the Horses and Human Research Foundation, and in particular to their Connect, Learn, and Inspire conference, which is coming up October 30th and October 31st. Hopefully you'll be listening to this before the conference, but either if you don't, there's certainly opportunities to get involved with HHRF. Also want to give a quick plug to our panelists. And let me go find it. In particular, Debbie's book, which is called Stopping Veteran Suicides with Horses, A Promising Approach to PTSD. And we're going to drop the D. You're gonna have to have another edition published. But it's I know most of us have either read it or had used it to prep for this podcast. And so it's I always like to plug anybody that has a book, and I will plug Martha's organization as well as Debbie's in the show notes. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jan for some other. One last thing I wanted to plug. This actually I'm going to plug for our next show. So we've talked the next one of it may not be the exact next disruptor segment, but one of our segments on the books to be recorded in the future is sort of another way to deal with disruption, whether it be, again, digital disruption or cognitive or mental or just whatever disruption. And so we are going to be interviewing an author of another book called The Art of Stopping, and it happens to be a relative of mine, David Kuntz. And so that's another, we'll look forward to, we'll be recording that in the near future. So Jan, with that, we're actually an hour and almost 45 minutes, I think, into this. So I'll give you the last word.
All right. Well, first of all, this is a something that we love doing new things when it comes to the disruptor or it comes to Apex Communications Network in general. And so being able to be a part of a panel, especially around something that is so early on in diving into the tangibility of the scientific research and hearing all of these amazing things coming from counseling perspectives and therapeutic perspectives and equine perspectives. And I mean, it's just been an amazing journey being able to be a part of this conversation. So I'd like to express my gratitude to everybody for stopping by today and allowing us to have the ability to facilitate this. And then for everybody that's listening, throughout this entire episode, I think if there's one thing that I've really been able to glean is that there's a community of people that cares. If you are one of these people, and I'd say these people as in I'm one of them, if you are a person, the only qualification that you need in order to be okay with relying on somebody else to help you through a situation is being human. Being human means we are a social creature. We have been from pretty much the time that we formed civilizations. and they are finding out that happened earlier and earlier. It seems like every year they're uncovering some new civilization that they found that, takes us back another 1,000 years. So we've been together for a very long time. And for a very long period of that time, horses have been a part of that life. So I would challenge anybody that is listening to this and kind of got their curiosity spiked to go to these resource websites and to interact with these people's brands and really dive deeper into what this research means. Because I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised that it's not just a bunch of woo-woo stuff, that there is a lot of scientific evidence behind it and that it is backed and that it is beneficial to all of these people. So that would be my final call to action to the audience. And, until next time, I hope that you guys stay curious, you keep challenging the norms, and you keep chasing your apex and keep being disruptors. I'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a great rest of your days.